This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about the finale of Moon Knight, episode 6, Gods and Monsters.
You're looking pretty rough, man. I don't know if you can hear me. From the moment you arrived, way back then, we were so young. You saved me. I survived because I knew I wasn't alone. You were always there, alive, full of hope. And I tried to protect that, and I failed. I couldn't protect you. But you didn't abandon me. You didn't abandon me. And all that field back there was looking pretty good. There's no way now I'm going to abandon you.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, for the finale of Moon Knight on TV Podcast Industries. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out this trio of White Knights, I am Chris.
Welcome back. The name of the episode is slightly contentious this week. We've got the name of it as Gods and Monsters, just purely from a tweet from Jeremy Slater, because it hasn't been updated on Disney Plus yet. It's still showing as episode 6, but there is a title called Gods and Monsters. We're sticking with that, right? Is that okay?
Kaijus and more kaijus.
Kaijus and Avatars, maybe?
Kaijus and Avatars. Oh my God, that's a film I would watch.
There you go.
Come on, James Cameron. You've already got 5 other in the bag. Give me the 6th one, Kaiju and Avatars.
There you go. That could work. Well, welcome back, fellow Defenders. We hope you've been enjoying watching Moon Knight Season 1 as much as we've been enjoying podcasting about it.
Yes, so much. Obviously, I got very shocked when you said the finale. I was like, the finale of TV Podcast Industries? Had no one told me? No. Just of Moon Knight.
Yes.
Series, limited run. 6 episodes. It's the end of the 6 episodes. Let's leave it at that.
Exactly.
Yes.
It couldn't possibly be the end of TV Podcast Industries. Chris, this week alone, we have this finale. We have the finale of Star Trek Picard. And also, we are going back to Doctor Strange. Everything leads to Doctor Strange. We are going back to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in the cinema this week. Squeak. I think you mean squee, John, rather than squeak.
Squeak.
That's the multiversal squeak.
I love it. But I do hope you have subscribed to the podcast, fellow Defenders. If you haven't subscribed just yet and you want to keep up with all the stuff that we podcast about, go over to tvpodcastindustries.com. You can subscribe to the podcast over there. Loads of options to catch up on all the stuff we're podcasting about. We do have lots and lots more TV shows coming up later this year as well, which you can find out over on the website. But we'd love if you follow us over there. Without further ado, let's get into our discussion about Moon Knight Episode 6, Gods and Monsters. Let's call out the executive producers one more time. I know you guys love that. Executive producers for Moon Knight are Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, Victoria Alonso, Grant Curtis, Brad Winderbaum, Oscar Isaac, Mohamed Diab, and Jeremy Slater.
Wow. I was really surprised that Kevin Feige was doing this one.
Yeah. Who knew? Who knew?
I'm sorry. I think they all deserve credit for a wonderful show.
Absolutely.
So I decided to call it out every week. The episode was directed by Mohamed Diab, who's directed most of the episodes for the season. The story for this episode was from Jeremy Slater, the co-creator or the creator of this show, along with Danielle Iman, who has been a writer on the show throughout the season, has been in the writer's room the whole way through. The teleplay for this episode also from Jeremy Slater, Peter Cameron, and Sabir Prezida, who've written other episodes of the season. But overall, as we always say, when the showrunner of the show is doing your final episode of the show, it's usually a good sign, right?
Definitely.
With that, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Moon Knight Episode 6, Gods and Monsters?
Sure. Arthur Harrow leaves the tomb of Alexander the Great to release Ammit and her judgment on the world. He is followed from the tomb by Layla. At a checkpoint on the road to Cairo, Layla looks to kill Harrow, but she is warned by Taweret, who has inhabited the body of dead soldiers, that his power is too great and she must release Khonshu so he can revive Mark Spector. At the Great Pyramid, Harrow uses Ammit's power to slaughter the other Egyptian gods' avatars before releasing Ammit, who chooses him to be her new avatar. At the same time, Layla finds Khonshu's Ushabti and releases him. In the vault, Layla refuses to become Khonshu's new avatar, so he confronts Amit alone, but is overpowered. Spiritually elsewhere, Mark chooses to return from the Field of Reeds to the Duat to rescue Stephen. With Tawret's help, they escape through the gates of Osiris and awaken back in their body. Khonshu senses their return and bonds with them, healing their body and restoring their powers as Moon Knight. Layla discovers from Osiris's dying avatar that Amit can be defeated if she can be bound into a mortal body, so she temporarily bonds with Tawret. Meanwhile, Harrow, his followers, and Amit begin to judge the souls of everyone in Cairo. But Mark, Stephen, Layla, and Khonshu arrive to engage them in battle. Fighting to save the people of Cairo, Moon Knight, Mr. Knight, and Layla, now as the avatar of Tawret, are eventually overpowered by Harrow, who almost kills Mark and Stephen, until they both black out and reawaken to find that they didn't brutally defeat Harrow. Mark and Layla are able to seal Amit in Harrow's body, imprisoning her again. Khonshu urges Mark to kill Harrow and Amit, but he refuses and orders Khonshu to release him and Stephen from his service. Now released, Mark and Stephen find themselves in the asylum once again, but reject it and choose to continue their new life together in Stephen's messy apartment in London. In a post-credit scene, Harrow is also in London as a patient in a psychiatric hospital. He receives a visitor and is wheeled out to a limousine where he is met by Khonshu sitting on the back seat, who orders his new avatar, Jake Lockley, Mark and Stephen's third alter, to do what they could not: execute Arthur Harrow and Amit, the Devourer of the Dead.
Excellent. Thanks for that, John. Lots happening this episode. We had a discussion about it last week and we weren't sure how they'd be able to wrap up the story in the final episode. What do we think before we go into our discussion about the points overall? Do you think they kind of were able to nail all the story points?
It's a B+, nearly an A- for me. There's one or two beats that I just felt just didn't land, potentially more just the way I was wanted, the way I would want it, the way I was expecting it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's still a B+, A- kind of result for me, and it's still one of the best Disney Plus shows I think about so far. It's just, I think, one or two of the little small things I was just, I wish I had, maybe this, and I understand, and we'll discuss them all. What about yourself? Yeah,
for me, I kind of came to the realization earlier on in the week when I heard the length of the episode at 43 minutes and realized, well, that's half a movie, that they've got a lot of time here. And I think they used the time really well. They've tied up everything I could think of that was important for season one really well in this episode. So I'm excited to talk about it. How about yourself, Dan? Any thoughts on that?
No, I thought they kind of wrapped it up all quite nicely, really. I think there's maybe one or two elements, certainly when they're suddenly back in the asylum, and just because of that going backwards and forwards. But I think it was done really well, and just that there was a really good economy of storytelling in that they told you what they wanted, and they showed it with kind of minimal fuss. So it was very efficient in that way.
Yes.
To be honest, it's kind of a bit like with movies. You know, we were talking about that recently where we watched Uncharted and kind of comparing it to Indiana Jones. And you just realize the economy of storytelling that packed a lot of story into the writing, and brought about quite a short movie. You know, like you think of 1980s movies, they're kind of an hour and a half, and yet they seem to last a long time, and they seem to cover everything, you know? And I felt like that was in the same kind of vein. It was just really good, strong, efficient storytelling.
Moon Knight's more Indiana Jones than Uncharted. That's a good tagline for it.
But it's like you said, it's like Highlander, it's like the original Highlander, it's like FX, it's Sneakers, it's all some of the best movies of their time, all under or just over 90 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
We've never compared notes on your top 10 movies of all time, Chris.
No,
if those are
really
on there,
haven't.
I have a feeling ours will not match.
No, but for what they were, they are cult classic
Yeah.
They may not be in my top 10 of all time, but they're definitely cult classics.
Oh, good. I'm only slagging, Chris. I'm only slagging.
I know, but I'm gonna make you watch all three of those now.
I've definitely seen every single one of those, probably multiple times, but I probably wouldn't watch them again with my current eyes. Guys, I've got a new toy to play with this week. And to inaugurate our new toy to play with this week, somebody else is going to be introducing our full moon, half moon, and total eclipse points.
Excellent.
Do it.
Full moon.
That's May Colambwe, who is introducing our full moon point. She doesn't know it. Don't tell her that she's doing it.
We may have to pay her royalties.
Yeah. It is from her little joke ad that she did for full moon, half moon, and total eclipse. So don't tell her. But we are going into our full moon point, our first big point about Moon Knight, episode 6, the finale of this season. Our first big point. Let's wrap it in to Ammit is finally free. This has been the driving force really behind Harrow throughout the season, and everything that's been going on has been driving towards getting Ammit free. And we start out the episode with effectively dead Mark Spector being stripped of the Ushabti of Ammit, and Harrow accomplishing the beginning of his goals, trying to reconnect with Ammit and trying to become her avatar. Really cool opening to this. I like when the villain gets closer to their plan, so you can actually see how it started to play out. I love that idea in this kind of movie.
I have one question, and it's not a problem. It's just a question.
It might be the same as mine.
Why couldn't he smash the statue in the tomb they were in and had to wait and go to inside the pyramids? Why did they have to wait inside there? That wasn't explained. Or if it was missed.
I think it was explained later where Osiris says their greatest source of power is within the Great Pyramid. But that came much later because I was thinking exactly the same thing. Why didn't he release Ammit
and just...
and release Ammit then? Because you get the whole change of his walking stick into half axe and half walking stick, I guess. So, for all those sort of violent pensioners, it would work a real treat. But it was, and he seemed to get some level of powering up because we even have, like later on with Taweret warning Layla, who's trying to kill him, that he's become too powerful, and yet he doesn't become the Avatar. So I wonder whether I didn't quite understand that sort of, I guess, as we would say, leveling up of power just by simply grasping the Ushabti. I think the other thing I didn't quite understand in that moment as well, when he takes the statue from Mark, is why he would leave the scarab beetle on his chest, because I just didn't understand that. It was that whole thing of you're just giving him the means to potentially track you again. And if he does come back, I mean, I know he probably thinks he is definitely done and dusted and dead, but it was just those kind of little things I was a little bit not sure about, and it's to that point of wrapping things up, or just, I guess, to some extent.
Yeah, for me, this was the James Bond villain moment where it's like, aha, Mr. Bond, I'm going to tell you my whole plan and then leave you to die on this overly engineered trap while I close the doors and walk away, and you'll never escape and you'll never come back to find me and figure it out. And it was like, again, I'm making light here. I'm putting it out straight away. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, B+, A-, like some of the best TV, even like, agree with Derek, what you said, it's like 44 minutes. They delivered a lot of it. It was these just little things where I'm like, okay, we talk about economy of storytelling. This was almost we didn't get a Basil exposition moment. Nope. We got a short track of here's one or two story beats that we're just going to kind of make. We're putting cheat codes to get the story from A to B in certain parts.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't take it to either of those levels. There are explanations for what you're talking about within the episode. It's very specifically said that that the major power is held within the Chamber of the Gods, this place that Harrow is going to. The reason he's going there is to release Ammit, so he has to go there to do that. They have to then take Harrow back there in order to bind him back to Ammit as well, and that's why Layla has to go there to release Khonshu as well. So this is their big center of power. So that's why he doesn't break it at that moment when he finds it. But remember, the staff that he holds, the reason why it has any power at all is because it's an artifact connected to Ammit. So I'm giving the story the credit here. Probably I'm adding a little bit to it here, but the fact that he's now in possession of
it's just
Ammit, that it's kind of enhancing his abilities.
In that makes sense.
But you're right; it is really cool the changing over into that axe with this moving crocodile head now as well. It's really cool change over to this to what looked like a formed cane, and it's now got this big power center to it. It's really cool. In terms of the scarab, and we had a quick chat about this earlier on, and again, it was one of those ones where I was thinking, I can see why Harrow would leave it behind. He's basically he doesn't think of Mark as being his enemy as such. He stood in his way. He tried to get Mark on his side, tried to get Mark to join him. Harrow thinks that he's completely in the right. He doesn't think of himself as the villain, remember? So it almost seems as a sign of respect. The quest has ended to find Ammit. The only purpose of that scarab is to find Ammit. So if he carries it with him, what's going to happen is it's effectively going to fly over his head constantly for the next hour or so when they're on the journey. So he's kind of going, right, put it to rest, put it as a sign of respect to my foe here who I've bested on the field of battle.
No, as I say, it was just those little things where in the moment of watching the episode, I was like, why is he doing that? Because you know that Mark and Stephen are going to come back. Mm-hmm. Of course, Harrow doesn't know that at all. He doesn't know of all the spiritual shenanigans going on with Taweret and all that in the Field of Reeds and in the Duat. So he has no idea that would be a plan in this moment. He is savouring his victory after 2 bullets into the chest of Mark Spector.
I do find it slightly funnier, actually, that even though he knows Layla is here, he's seen her, he's had a conversation with her. When the noise goes, whenever he has bowed down and is willing to heal the world, then a noise goes in the background of her cracking the neck of one of his followers, effectively, and just kind of raises his eyes, but then walks on and moves out of the place. He doesn't go and investigate.
That's why you should always keep a register, even even as the leader of a dubious cult. You need to keep a register of all those attending, so that when you've lost someone to the good guys trying to get you.
Actually, don't forget to microchip your henchmen in the future.
That is a point, though. They did lose a lot of henchmen going in here. Remember, they almost had an entire village above the tomb of Alexander. They've lost most of those people, and they just fitted to 2 cars, basically, so 2 or 3 vans. So they have lost quite a lot of people. So maybe his tracking system is playing up.
And given what transpires, I wonder whether there are enough followers, at least in Cairo, to go around and hold everyone's wrists in order to get the balance. But to Ammit coming alive and breaking free, I loved the design of Ammit. Really, really did. And it's kind of strange, isn't it, with Ammit and with Taweret? Just the contrast, because they're so colourful compared to Khonshu. I guess is why Stephen calls him an old bird. Just it's almost like he's the pensioner of the Egyptian gods. He's just wearing sort of the subdued colours now. I know it's the moon.
Yeah,
I know he's looking. It's because he's the moon god, and it's the pale white of the moon. But just in contrast of the colour and richness of Ammit compared to the pale moonshine of Khonshu. Yes. I thought it was really, really good. But I loved how this played out. And of course, one of our theories that Osiris was somehow involved with Harrow, that pact, completely wrong. Because Harrow takes out the avatars of the gods. They're in the Great Hall in the Great Pyramid. So they weren't in league with him at all. They were as surprised as anyone else, I guess, in that situation.
Yeah, I think that was one of those ones that everybody really read into the fact that if you call them gods, then they must be like our version of God, which is they're omnipotent. They have a vision of everything that's going on. I think we even made a comment before. How could they possibly know? How could they not know what was going on with Harrow, and how could they release him? And I think here it's a little bit clearer. They get a bit of a warning that something's going on. That's why all of the avatars are called to this chamber of the gods. They don't know exactly what's going on. They know that someone's trying to free Ammit, but they don't know exactly what's happening. They're just being called there because there's a disturbance in the Force. Let's say it's Star Wars Day today as we're recording, so that's a little Star Wars reference for you. That's what it kind of feels like. The gods know something is going on, get their avatars together and send them to this place to protect, to try and protect Ammit from being freed, I guess is the way you put it, right?
Yeah, and then they literally get there just in the nick of, oh no, there's Hamlet. Literally as he comes in and wipes them off.
Yeah, this one kind of annoyed me. How quickly he dispatches of all these of all the avatars. Now, we did mention before, none of them are avatars of vengeance like Moon Knight, so they're not particularly inspired by fighting. But I did think that the avatar of Osiris particularly, I thought he was throwing up a big shield. That's what the last thing we see him do, and then it cuts away and cuts back and they're all lying on the floor effectively killed.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is to the point where you probably wouldn't take the gods at face value if they asked you to become an avatar, because you would be expecting a bit more powered upness if you were, politely asked to become their avatar. So, yeah, it was all. I felt it was a little weird that they were dispatched so quickly.
Yeah,
but then I guess it's as you say, it's to what their power. They're not armored up. They haven't got weapons in the same way, but certainly those that do, such as we see later with Moon Knight back in the picture, can deal or delay at least Harrow a lot better. But Harrow then is also an avatar.
Exactly.
And so again, maybe another enhancement to his powers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, and look, it's a minor quibble. Let's put it that way. Like, again, I think they spent a lot of the FX budget on the kaiju battles and the battles later. Yeah. So I think it was kind of like, hey, we can put loads of explosions here, or we can do this. It was like, all right, we'll do a fade to black here and cut to it later. For me, it's just, I'm curious now. So we do see that the rest of the quorum of the gods are no more. Like, their avatars are no more. So the gods no longer have avatars. So that does leave a nice potential storyline for next season.
If there's one.
And we, if it comes ever, question mark. But yeah, fair point. The other part is as well, there is a number of other stone trapped gods who are potentially no longer in their form. So what if a stone statue falls off a shelf and then is smashed on by collapsing rubble? Does that still free a trapped god? These are questions I have.
Yeah.
Because later, that whole pyramid, that whole tomb, that whole chamber and the subsequent surrounding chambers are demolished to a degree. Yeah. So the room where Khonshu is freed from, and not just Ammit is freed, but Khonshu is freed.
Yeah.
There is a number. What we saw a large number of other statues.
Chris was almost giving away one of our pub quiz questions there and forgetting about that is one of the pub quiz questions, but he's not going to do it. We'll say a large number.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was really surprised that we didn't get a moment where Layla smashed open the rest of the Ushabti to aid herself with more gods and possibly more avatars that they would bring on board. But we will be going into the battle later on. I do think the battle works really well with just between the two gods and the avatars of those two gods overall. So I'm kind of glad they didn't complicate it, because that's I think a real compliment I'll give to this episode. They didn't overcomplicate anything. It felt like they were telling the story they wanted to tell without throwing in extra bells and whistles that didn't really need to be there. But I do get your point. That's definitely something that they could pick up in future if they wanted to. That maybe one of the gods got freed in that moment, and that's a god that we see come back in future.
Well, that's it. And I mean, I think that's also the skill of writing to TV, because ultimately with this mini-series, with this series of Moon Knight, we have 6 episodes. You know, it's a double movie in effect. And the pacing of that, we say, you know, can be slower. They can go deeper into more characterization and so on. But there's also that need to realize when you need to pace it faster. Yeah. And so I think they've judged it absolutely superbly in these 6 episodes, including this one. So yeah, I think that they just told the story. They didn't get bogged down in the, you know, getting from Field of Dreams and the Duat to Osiris's door, and all that kind of thing, like they could have done as to why did the door open? Did the Avatar do something there to let, you know, to inform Osiris to let it open, or all those kind of things, you know, Hippo to the rescue, and so on with the, you know, stopping the tidal wave of sand from enveloping them.
Well, that's basically our next point. I think we're probably done with Amet being free as our initial point. We'll come back to Amet, I'm sure, in our later point as the story progresses. But let's let May again take us on to our second point.
Half Moon.
I hope she doesn't mind that not only did I steal her voice, but I'm now calling her by her first name as well.
First name terms.
Yes, our half moon point, the Scarlet Scarab avatar of Taweret. So, lots going on in this episode for Layla, and lots going on with Taweret. Let's talk about it all within this point here. So, John, you're already mentioning a little bit about the return of Mark and Stephen from the afterlife, from the Field of Reeds and from the Duat. We talk about that here with the help of Taweret.
Yeah, I mean, I love this Hippo.
She's amazing.
You know, it's although, you know, don't get to love them in the wild because they'll probably chew you up and spit you out quite quickly in the old river. Yes, but I love this Hippo. Really, just so good. I loved kind of just everything about it. It's when she asks Layla to become her avatar. And Layla's like, just temporary, though. You know, she knows the issues with Khonshu and Mark. Yep. And she says, oh, yes, of course, you know. And I love that she almost gives the game away of Layla being in there by coming in and squeaking really happily because there's Layla. Yeah. I love the touching moment about her father, that, you know, she helped him to the Field of Reeds, telling Layla that her dad has gone to heaven, not being consumed by the sands of the Duat. And so this felt very core here for me, you know, quite emotional with this. And then obviously the kick-ass suit of the Scarlet Scarab as well. So just, I know I'm kind of running through the points here, but it's just kind of just really, really enjoyed that, and her rescuing Mark and Stephen from the Duat in particular,
where you're supposed to start, John.
Yeah, where effectively, you know, she just does, you know, a sailing move. You know, not only a hippo, but a good sailor as well.
Yeah, I must say I really like that. I'm going to take a little bit more of Mark and Stephen at the beginning. I really like that because last episode we ended where you could have ended the entire show. You ended with Mark separated from Stephen now gone, and Mark in the Field of Reeds effectively. But he makes that choice to go back for Stephen. It's not right if he gets to go on to the afterlife and Stephen's stuck in sand forever and makes that decision. But Torad's calling after him going, you will never be able to come back here. If you go now, this is your own one and only time to be in the Field of Reeds. If you don't, if you leave now, you can't come back. But Mark pays no mind and goes on. On my second watch, I worked out the full flow of how this scene works effectively. So Osiris has lost his avatar, and he opens the gates to allow Stephen and Mark to go back through. That's why they're allowed to go back through. Mark and Stephen are freed from the sand at that point because the door is opened up beside them. If you remember last time, they literally were just at the gate, turned the boat just beforehand. So that's why Stephen is so close to it. But again, this is all happening in Mark's mind, and he's the one that's creating this vision of the place, or this version of the place that he's seeing. So
yeah, absolutely. It's also the difference in circumstances in that Osiris's avatar has just been attacked in the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
So is alerted to the danger.
Exactly.
Because, we the previous episode, Tarot says, even just getting to those doors, you'd have to convince Osiris to do it. And now it's, alarm bells are going, the red lights are flashing, and Osiris is like, yes, this is a route to both dealing with the threat of Amit and her avatar.
Exactly. Then the next bit that I just wasn't sure of, I had no idea what this wave of sand was that was coming after them. But effectively, Osiris has opened the doors to let them through, but the Duat's not willing to let them go because the Duat has captured them. The Duat is what's pulling them down, and they're supposed to be there forever. Effectively, that's what was happening all last episode, was the sand was trying to trap them before they got to the Field of Reeds. And now, when they're about to escape, that's why it's coming out. So that cool move from Tuara to stop the sand in her ship is to block the Duat from getting them, which I kind of love the way that was told when watching it through this time.
I think the other thing as well about this whole scene, just as Taweret is speaking with Mark in the Field of Reeds, and he's saying it's so quiet, and she's saying, well, this is what you've been missing. You're manifesting it. So it's also about what Mark is manifesting at that moment, about this reality within the spiritual plane of his continued existence. So, and the whole season is about the manifestation of reality and the differences of that in that sense. So I thought that was really a nice line that really added, again, just more to this. And ultimately, you can manifest quite a lot of things, I guess, if you're in a spiritual plane like that. So that's why they could be closer, Yeah. So
exactly.
For me, it was just touching. It's this silence, and as you said, John, it's that point where Taweret is saying, "This is what you wanted. This is your heaven. Silence, peace, stillness. Just that is you. That is what you want." And he's willing to give. His heart is full, so he's willing to stay there as this with his full heart. And then he goes, "No, that's not fair on Stephen." And what we see then is late at the. I'm going to jump. The very last scene is the two of them able to communicate in unison now. Yeah. They're on the same page. So what we see is almost siblings. It's gone from noise. So it turns out Mark was aware of Stephen there in the background at parts as well. So there was always this just constant noise of the other altars, which we now know is more than one. So now we're saying that he's accepted. They have essentially, I think it's the Lemire. No, it's not Jeff Lemire run. One of the comic book runs, and there some of the more hardcore Mark Spector Moon Knight fans will be able to kind of fully correct me on this. But it's essentially where him and his alters come together and come to the realization and kind of join forces and basically become a single working organization. Let's call it that.
Yeah, the We Are Moon Knight moment.
The We Are Moon Knight. Exactly. Yeah. This felt like by the two of them sitting and grasping that hand and the single heart. So basically, that's what I was trying to figure out. It was like, what the? Oh, he places his full heart in their palms. Half his, half Mark's. Half Mark's, half Stephen's.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they then become one, and they are able to pull each other through the gates of Osiris.
Yeah. And that's where last week's episode has just created a monumental shorthand for dealing with that really quickly, easily, but still with the depth and the emotion. And that's the great thing about the writing from this episode.
Yeah.
And linked with the previous one, which was much more sort of specific and a bit more, less action in a sense, more exposition, more sort of developing that quite intimate dynamic between the two identities.
Exactly.
And here, it gives its this scene, as you described, Chris, just great shorthand in terms of that. Let alone adding in the heart, which I didn't actually see in place in the middle. So I immediately, so once you see it there, I just thought it had appeared, rather than had been placed there by Mark. So I didn't realize he took that with him when he went to the field of reeds. But yeah, I must say I would go stir crazy in a field of reeds that was just pure silence. I would hope that the field of reeds would be able to be turned into a field of rave and glow sticks, and then that would probably be all right.
That'd be your afterlife. It's just a version of an afterlife, John, and it needs quiet. That's probably all it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, loved it. Let's get back to the Scarlet Scarab, as we're calling Layla now. Well done, Chris, for your call on this last week.
Yeah, I was very happy that I wasn't completely misreading the situation. When she took, now different origin, but they fully called it out with the little girl going, "Are you Egypt's superhero?" And she was like, "I am." And I'm like, "Cool, they've just made the Scarlet Scarab," and I am very happy with that. We have a Captain America. We now have the Scarlet Scarab, which is essentially Captain Egypt, where we have a multiversal Captain Britain, in Captain Carter. So we are getting potentially closer to what was in the Ultimates comic book run, where there was a Captain Spain, Captain Britain, Captain Egypt, Captain Africa. Could be cool. I would look the oh my God, her outfit was just,
it was great.
Like Toette going, "I have an idea for a costume," and I'm like, oh God, it's going to be like one of those terrible I Dream of Jeannie moments where she's just, I thought it was going to go really cliche and then have that kind of joke where not a chance, and then it becomes a bit more superhero.
Right.
But straight up, I was like, oh, okay, it looks like an armored kind of priestess outfit.
Yeah.
And then the wings come, and I was like, oh.
Wings with swords on them. How cool is that?
Yeah. I was like clapping away, and I'm like, Wonder Woman has nothing right now. That is just like, that is the golden Wonder Woman outfit times 10. They kind of figured out how to make it look a bit better, and in my opinion, just ran with it.
It does look really cool, and it makes loads of sense. It's finally starting to take away that the constant joke about the MCU and the Marvel comic universe as well, which is so New York centric. It took a long time to get characters even out of New York to be created, and people out for different countries. Of course, if you're going to spend most of your time in Egypt and have an Egyptian character, definitely set them up as a superhero. Layla's cool here. She really works really well as this new avatar for Tarash. The abilities she has, we have seen her fighting style earlier on in the season. It doesn't seem to be massively escalated, other than she has more power available to her. So I like that. It doesn't seem like it's a huge jump to see her in this outfit being this avatar for Tarash, like it could have been for another character who didn't have the same kind of impetus to the character built in throughout the previous episodes. So happy to see Layla there. And I like that she's the temporary avatar, but we don't see the end of that relationship. It's not like she hands back the suit or Tarash ends the relationship there. Temporary just means for as long as I'd like to do it, right? So so we could absolutely see Layla in the future in this exact same.
That'd be awesome.
In the future. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant, and her, as you said, her fighting style, her flying, her pretty much like saving that kid, and kind of saving a lot of the population of Cairo was cool, and that was fun to see. Speaking of strange powers, and thing like that. I have a question. Did Moon Knight fly or did he just jump?
Well, yes.
Is he jumping and gliding, or is he now flying?
Dare I say
any of
it.
our new listeners, if you go back all the way to the Defenders TV podcast, way back in the day, Jessica Jones, we used to have a question: is she jumping or is she flying? And I am asking that exact same question here with Moon Knight. Poll, please.
I have literally written in my notes, Moon Knight fly/glides. It's what I've got written in here. It was really funny. I was laughing because there is in the comic books, Moon Knight has a helicopter that he travels around in, and he's got his moon copter that he travels around in. There's almost a moment in the shape of that when he's flying that it looks similar in shape to the moon copter. But I was trying to weigh it up. We were talking about it literally as we watched the episode, going, have they just created a superhero that flies in the Marvel Universe? Yeah. What other superhero flies under their own power? And we couldn't think of anybody. I guess it's Captain Marvel, but she's powered by an Infinity Stone, effectively.
Yeah, so. And she's kind of got, sort of the jet trails, because like there was nothing to show how he was propelling himself along. Like, and because of the sequence of his silhouette on the moon, which again I loved. I loved that. Loved the shape. I thought it was I just thought it was going to be a very, very long grapple hook that sort of was pulling him to Cairo, and certainly when we saw the grapple hook being used in the fight. So I was wondering. I guess grapple hook and glide, which leads to other possible questions.
Yeah, so for me, it looked like there was a bit of dust kind of gathering Superman style at his feet when he jumped. This is kind of the question I had, because it looked like he was doing that kind of Superman Man of Steel first flight. Kind of, there was little bits of dust gathering before he jumped.
Don't start to bring DC into this now. Don't start to bring DC into this.
When he put this, he whipped out the cape. I was like, okay, so it's essentially just a big jump and he's going to glide all this way. And then the only thing that made me question it was when the cape then whipped back in the back and he was literally just like torpedoing. I was like, okay, you just need to explain that at some point. I like the idea of jumping and gliding. Essentially, like he has Khonshu base kind of, it's like a fastball special. Khonshu is just throwing him in the air and he's just gliding in the range of Colossus and Wolverine from the comic books. Anyway, it was a one I was like, huh? So let's talk about Khonshu. Let's talk about Mark and Moon Knight and then Mr. Knight and Stephen coming back, because we do get that cool scene where essentially Mark's body comes back up and you see the ting ting of the bullets kind of reforming out, and you see the Moon Knight outfit kind of come back again around Mark.
Yes, you do. And I think just one of the things I wanted to call out here is we talked about the origin story of Moon Knight being told in the last episode, and we were wondering about that whole thing of Mark crawling up half dead or dying into the chamber of Moon Knight and then attempting to kill himself but being pulled back from the brink by Khonshu, whereas here he is literally being brought back to life by Khonshu. We're seeing that on screen. We're seeing him being brought back to life in that moment, and then the suit being attached again. It's so cool. God, I have to say this is the best looking version of the transformation into the Moon Knight suit that we've seen this season. For me, I thought it looked fantastic.
Yeah, it really did. And there's the Khonshu spiel as well about becoming his fist of vengeance and Moon Knight, and he also kind of intimates on that to Layla as well when he's asking her, or when she thinks he's asking her to be his avatar as well. So I guess that's where the magic comes in terms of that.
Yeah, it has to be that particular phrase, exactly. And I love that we get a great pause moment there from Stephen as well when they all get the powers back. We are now Moon Knight again, And Stephen goes, right, how's the deal going to work now? Right.
Yeah,
So let's just
exactly.
sit down. I know you need me. I know you need the Fist of Khonshu. So it's the perfect time to negotiate, right?
Yeah.
I feel that's almost the position that Oscar Isaac's in right now. So he's now seen the reaction of people to Moon Knight at the TV show. He can now make his decision as to whether he wants to come back for 4 times the money that they paid him for the first season. If they really want him back and they really want to do more with Moon Knight, let's sit down now and make this deal before you announce that we're getting a season 2 or I'm in whatever movie coming up.
Yeah. This for me was just one of the funniest moments because this started then cementing the flips back and forth.
Yeah.
Not just of Stephen and Mark, but the Mr. Knight and Moon Knight kind of and I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, and later on they can do a like if we get another film or whenever we see Moon Knight again, they can do a mid fight, literally mid punch change, and they'll show that on a kind of screen.
That's
and
true. They were close. Yeah, they were close to that for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that was one of the parts of the fight which was great.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, we are going on to our third point for the episode. Our
Total eclipse.
Yay!
full-mouthed May Calamaway saying total eclipse there. Yes, our total eclipse point for the episode is a battle of gods and monsters, the battle that's going on here between Ammit, Khonshu, and the avatars of them as well. So let's talk about the fight itself, because it does form a really big portion of this episode. And I, as I said, this seems to be written really well. There's lots of great movement going on. You see lots of use of each of the powers of the avatars here. We've seen Mark fight as Moon Knight before. We've seen a little bit of Stephen as Mr. Knight before, but now we have Stephen with his abilities, his brand new skill set, as he says, that he wants to show off. He's cool. I love Mr. Knight's fighting style. I love that he's got that little bit more brutality with the batons that are going on. I love that Moon Knight's got his gadgets that are going on. And I love Scarlet Scarab, Layla. I love her abilities with her combining this jumping, flying type style with the weapons that she's now got, and
Definitely.
her shields that she's creating with the 2 wings is cool too. Love that.
Yeah, I thought the fighting was just really good, and I think just having the backdrop as well, I think you get in one of them of Khonshu and Ammit as well, sort of supersized, was just really, really good.
Fantastic.
I mean, even just seeing Ammit, because she has the head of a crocodile. It was great seeing her use that, because actually she seemed quite restrained up till that point. But when she got into the fight, she was, happy to use the biting chops of the crocodile.
Absolutely.
Using Khonshu's staff against him as well. So that was all really, really nicely done.
Yeah, and use her tail as well. To knock down, and to capture Khonshu, to knock him down, to keep him down underneath her. Yeah, love this stuff.
It was really, really well done. And in the fight, to what you were saying before about having, and I think that would probably just sort of notch it up to 11 for me, but I think we were at a solid 10 here with Mr. Knight fighting with Harrow. Goes into a small shop that's got computer screens, and Harrow chucks him out, and then it's Moon Knight that comes out of the other shop that he's been chucked into. So I thought that was I loved that with the grapple gun, actually, that Harrow dodges. So I really thought that sequence was just superb. I mean, the whole sequence, but that I just really liked because of that change. And as you say, Chris, I think having the change happening maybe in mid throwing a punch or something would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, but there's so many great little movements if you watch that fight. There's so many great, and from the moment that they switch over, we mentioned them flying into Cairo. There's a moment when Moon Knight's flying in, picks up Harrow. Harrow gets a hold of his cape, so Mark turns into Mr. Knight so that Harrow loses his grip on his cape.
Yep.
Like, how cool is that? Just to think about it when they're doing these movements. Another great transition moment where we have Mr. Knight throwing his baton at Harrow. Harrow bounces it off a wall, and it's Moon Knight that catches it.
No, exactly.
On the other end, just all these great switches of everything that's going on here. So it is like 3 people fighting at the same time against Harrow. Love it.
Yeah.
It was superb. And they've both got the high knee as well, because you have that nice silhouette on the side of the pyramid where Moon Knight uses his raised knee into Harrow.
Mm-hmm.
You see that again being utilized by Mr. Knight in the fight in the streets of Cairo, which was really good.
Yeah, I look at the fight for me was as you said, it takes over a large proportion of the ending of the episode, or the last 15 minutes. But for me, it was fun because it was just that. It's the culmination of this. It's the acceptance of Mark and Steven as a singular entity, as one, and being able, not in competition but in unison.
Yeah,
and you see that, and you see it with their style. And now that Mark, or Mr. Knight, has his skill set, he's showing off, and it's just, it all combines.
Yeah,
and that leads then to the final blackout.
Yes, I think we have a kind of contentious point here, I guess, with amongst TV podcast industry. So I'll go first on this one, because I think I'm the most positive on this moment. Effectively, it's a no-win situation that we seem to have Mark and Steven in, along with Layla. She's attached to a car. She can't get away from that in order to get to Harrow, and Harrow has Moon Knight dead to rights, let's say. That's both Steven and Mark. Then we have a blackout moment, and Mark wakes back up surrounded by bodies, as we've seen multiple times throughout the season. There's been a blackout, somebody else has taken over. He asks Steven, and Steven goes, definitely wasn't me, mate. There's no way I could have done this. So both of them aware now of this other identity, both of them aware somebody else took over and finished off Harrow on their behalf, effectively. But none of us got to see them, except for Layla, who has seen. Well, we can call him Jake now, right? Because we know by the end of the episode.
Yes, exactly. We can say Jake.
I loved this because we got enough fighting. We had a really great fight sequence here between, as we already mentioned, Mark, Steven, and Layla versus Harrow, plus the massive kaiju battle that's going on between Ammit and Khonshu. So call back to what they've done throughout the season here. Call back to those moments where things didn't appear on screen. It's a great usage of something that they created for this show specifically, I thought. That's why I liked this scene. If we didn't have the post-credit sequence, I would have been really annoyed. But we did, so fine. So for me, really happy with this because it ties into how the show has gone so far. What did you guys think of it? I'm already telling our listeners that you probably weren't on the same page as me. What did you think of it overall?
Well, I mean, in the moment watching it, I was like, I can't believe they didn't show Jake.
Right.
And I was really disappointed. Mm-hmm. And to your point, in reverse, the fact that they showed Jake Lockley in the post-credits, then I was like, fine. Mm-hmm. Jake needed to be shown. And not just hinted at or shown through, but not identified properly.
Totally agree.
He needed to be identified properly because hint, all the way through this series.
Yep.
So, I was like going, I can't believe they just did that. Mm-hmm. I have to say, the fact that we got the post-credit, then I'm going, fine. That's absolutely perfect. And that's probably the reason why they did it. Because as you say, it's consistent with what they've shown previously in terms of the blackout and the sudden switch. And they're able to show Jake.
Yeah. What did you say, Chris?
So I'm disappointed. And again, this was probably what dropped it from like an A+ down. Essentially, and there was one other piece as well, but essentially for me, we had seen this. I'm using the term trick in the sense of the story trick, mm-hmm. right? So basically, it's almost a fade to black. And I understand, and I'm like you, if we hadn't have got Jake, it would have been even worse. But it was what I would have liked is the fade out of Mark on this and Steven on this. Mm-hmm. And then from the point of view of Layla, we see Jake and the viciousness. This is a 16 in the UK and Ireland. This is a 16 plus age limit show, not TVMA, not mature or anything like that, not 18 plus. So it still allows some of that. So what you could have got is Layla's point of view on this, the ferocity and the ferociousness of Jake in silhouette form. You don't need to see the blood and all that.
No.
I thought that could have been, because then you tease the third suit, because I'm going to set this up. I think, so in the comic books, there is another, it has been shown, I'm not giving away too much, there is another fist of Khonshu. The left fist to the right fist of Moon Knight, if you want to call it that. A guy called Hunter Moon. Yeah. I think that's what Jake is going to be. I think Jake is going to be the Hunter Moon-esque. It's going to be the black to the white Moon Knight. The essentially a dark kind of suited version. And I thought that's what they would do. Or because then it would just be silhouetted, right? So you would see silhouette, they show. Because here what we have is essentially that final gotcha. And I'm like, cool, but I don't know what you got, unfortunately, because we're missing that. We still get a lot of the culmination, which is good. If it had finished on that, I would have been more. But we still got the culmination. We still got the dragging off to the chamber of the gods and then the remainder. I just feel, and I'm within the first 24 hours, 2 viewings, so I still feel I'm still quite, this was great, yay! And I'm like kind of pumped from that, so the adrenaline is still going. It's just, I feel, and I'm using too strong of a term, so I'm hoping Derek can give me a better term, cheated.
Oh, right.
I really wanted, it's too strong of a term, but it's like, I wanted to see that culmination. I can't think of a better word. It's like missed opportunity, or what, Derek? It's not, cheated is too strong, way too strong of a term, but it's the term that's like popping because of the adrenaline.
It's something that you wanted to see, and I get that, but I do think it gives them loads of opportunities here as well. So I've mentioned my big reason why I loved it is simply this ties into how Moon Knight, the story has been told throughout the season. If you do it once more, you do it with Jake. And we've seen Jake at the end of the episode. We know what he's like now, or at least this version of it, a good indication of what he's going to be like in the future. But this gives him great opportunity. If we're going to have Moon Knight appear on the big screen in a massive movie in the future, and we have the ability to create a brand new Moon Knight suit for this big screen that doesn't look like Mark's suit or the Mr. Knight suit, you give that over to another director that's going to be doing a movie in the future, and you may have a completely different looking Moon Knight in the future. And they've laid it out so they can do that. I'm not saying that's the reason why they did it, but I think the choice here to tie it back into the rest of the story is great, because again, I didn't need to see more brutality on the screen. I got a great fight there. It skipped, and we know that it's Jake. And by the end of the episode, that's all been revealed. It's all clear exactly what happened there. Layla's the only person that saw the actual fight, and she doesn't have a conversation about it afterwards. So she doesn't. No. She just knows it wasn't Mark and knows it wasn't Stephen. But it sets up stuff and allows stuff to be used in the future. That's probably why I liked it.
I agree with you on that for sure. But I had the initial same reaction. I know it's dealing in hypotheticals because we know how the show happens. So I mean, but if they had teased, if Jake Lockley, if they had done him there and then and shown it, I would not have wanted it to have been his silhouette, because that would have just been another tease, and we've already had the tease, even though he's in a sarcophagus. I don't want to see it through Layla's eyes. I want to see it through Jake Lockley's eyes as another identity of both with Mark and with Stephen. So it's either they did what they did, or they go all in and show the suit and the up close, fighting and so on. But ultimately, we got to see the full reveal, the non tease, by having him with his cap, sans mustache, and in the post credit. So I'm more than happy with that. Yeah. I'm more than happy, and I think then
I also think you add a massive wrinkle to the story if you're bringing Jake Lockley here. Given that Mark and Stephen don't know who he is, you have to suddenly deal with it. Yeah, exactly. You have to have a conversation with Layla. He has to have a conversation with Mark and Stephen about who he is and how he's been hiding for all these years when he was created.
Yeah.
That opens up that whole story, which is all left there on the table for somebody who wants to take it if they want to do a season 2, if they want to do another movie.
Exactly.
But by knowing this other identity's here, but revealing the detail of who he is by the end of the episode, you don't have to go into all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. You're absolutely entitled to the opinion.
Yes. No, like
of
I
course.
said, look, it's a this plus the no title card basically brings it from 100%, from an 11 to a 9.5. It is still some of the best endings we've gotten in a long time. It's still some of the best TV we've gotten in a long time. So I am not. It is basically I am nitpicking at the fact where I'm just like slightly disappointed. Like, and again, I fully called out that my use of the word cheated is hyperbole and because of adrenaline and everything else like that. By a better term is kind of slightly disappointed, but overall very satisfied.
Yeah.
Yay!
I think straight off the bat this morning when I watched the episode, I think the only thing I tweeted out afterwards, other than I really enjoyed it, was I hope everybody sees that post-credit scene before they make any kind of judgment on the episode, because if you make a judgment before that post-credit scene, you probably will be massively disappointed that they teased and teased and teased and then it didn't pay off. But the fact that it did pay off, I'm really glad, because I'm sure there are people out there that haven't watched that post-credit scene. Lots of people live tweet their thoughts or live do their live reactions. And I would say at that very moment, right at the end of it, where they go, oh, not again. They still didn't show Jake that an opportunity to do it.
No, definitely. But with that reversal of fortune here, where Harrow ends up being on the floor where Mark had just been, we have Mark and Layla encanting and effectively locking Amit into the mortal body of Harrow. And we have the, Khonshu, the dubious godly dealer here as well, looking for them to kill Harrow, and in doing so, by extension, killing and wiping out Amit. And here is where that they deal in that they deal their chips to get the money back. It's releases. They make the choice not to do it, sort of prompted by Layla here.
Exactly. And it's massive growth for the character of Mark here. We saw his backstory back in the last episode, and the overriding feeling from Mark is that he's ashamed and he's feels guilty about the things that he's done in his past. He's the one that walked in and saw all the death that he created over the years. He remembers every single person he's killed. So that stuff has weighed on him for so long. Khonshu used that to get him to become his avatar in the first place. Yeah. So when we see Layla saying to him here, you are free, here's a moment for you to make a choice and walk away. And Mark takes that choice and says to Khonshu, we've just seen him battle, as he said, a kaiju battle between him and Ammit. He could absolutely kill Harrow if he wants to kill him, but he wants to give another thing on the side of the scales to keep Mark down, to keep Mark tied to him effectively. Absolutely. So I love that movement again. Really good economy of storytelling from to tie it in this week, that this big decision is Mark's decision because he has changed by accepting himself.
And of course, with that decision, you see the release from Khonshu's service, effectively, with the bandages sort of peeling away. I guess losing the suit as such.
It goes to place. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because now they're not his avatar, or are they? Or just not knowingly.
Not knowingly,
exactly, and it just shows you the duplicitousness of Khonshu. That moment. I know it's in the post credit where he says, Mark didn't know how truly broken and chaotic he was, because as well, with the dust settling before the end credits, I'm still there going, why are they strapping themselves into the bed still?
Okay, you've asked about 100 questions.
I know, I've got loads of there's loads of questions.
And there's another really big one we need to talk about as well in this sequence. So Chris, you jumped in and said 100% they are still the avatar of Khonshu. Yes. I completely disagree with that. Mark and Stephen have been released as avatars of Khonshu. The avatar of Khonshu as we hear in the post-credit scene, is now Jake. What I loved about that is because it ties into what Khonshu, the agreement that Khonshu made with Stephen. He says, you will both be free. He specifically calls out 2 of them will be freed. So that's why I think they are no longer the avatar of Khonshu. They are released from their service of him, but Jake isn't. Jake wants to be the avatar of Khonshu. Jake will go on and continue. And I wonder if that's the reason why Stephen's tied into his bed at the end. Is it Jake that's tying him into his bed at the end? And he's waking up with the conversation that's going on between Mark and Stephen, not realizing that Jake has had the body for a few days, being the avatar of Khonshu.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, that makes sense to me. Yeah. I mean, I guess my feeling on it, or what I'm thinking is that they both aren't and they are the avatar. They're not because they've been released from Khonshu's service in that sense, but because of the different alters for that one body, then Jake has willingly said, I'm still your avatar, or signed up to be his avatar. Yeah. And so it's only Jake that can call upon, and Khonshu will give his powers to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I see this very much going in the way of Stephen was not willingly the avatar of Khonshu in the beginning.
Yeah,
when
he wasn't the avatar.
Mr. Knight. No, but he had access to the powers. That's the difference. He will be able to become Mr. Knight. He called the suit. And I see this will be partially, which is in the future, theoretically, Jake is the avatar of Khonshu. He is the Moon Knight. Yeah. Now, there's nothing to say in the future if Mark and Stephen figure out that theoretically their body is host to the avatar still, much like Stephen was able to call the suit, maybe in the future they can call the suit. Yeah. And I think that's where they are not the avatar, quote unquote. They are not in the same way that Stephen was not the avatar back in at the beginning. When they sat outside the dunes in front of Khonshu and they made the deal, Stephen became the avatar too. And therefore they both were stripped of that avatar title. Jake has not been. Jake will always continue because he wants to be. So I think that's where they will. That is the potential in the future of this, where they are still potentially powered, if you want to call it that, because the same way Stephen was powered and Mark wasn't. Yeah. Sorry, I should say not wasn't powered. Stephen had access to certain powers before. He didn't fully have the skill sets, but he was able to call the suit, the billy clubs, and things like that. Back in episode 2.
We're saying exactly the same thing, which is good.
We all are, yes.
It is simply that Stephen and Mark think they are no longer the avatars of Khonshu because they've made that deal. He has released them from it. There's very unlikely they would have a reason to call the suit. But if for some reason they did, if they fell off the top of a building and suddenly they stopped close to the ground, they would suddenly realize inside them is the avatar of Khonshu, which is Jake. Yeah. So that's absolutely story potential for the future. But right now, they're released. Jake is keeping it on. But there is one other thing that we need to talk about in this scene, which is the return to the psychiatrist office, because again, this is causing lots and lots of confusion. So this is really intriguing to me because we had this conversation a bit last week about what's real, what's not real, what's going on. On reflection with last week's episode, it now feels like Harrow was inside the mind of Stephen and Mark, trying to guide them. It was inside their kind of mind palace, their afterlife almost. He's the one that was messing with them and kind of pushing them to admit that their world isn't real, that Moon Knight isn't real, that Khonshu isn't real. This time it feels like they're inside Harrow's mind and messing with him and telling him this is all real and you're not in control, because we see a different Harrow here. While he still looks like the psychiatrist that we saw in the last episode, he's got his bleeding feet. That's an indication that this is the Harrow that we saw at the beginning of the series, this avatar of Ammit. So it feels like the two of them are in his mind telling him, you have no power over us anymore. It's kind of the final nail in the coffin of Harrow, putting him away and putting him into his final resting place, I guess.
Okay, well, whereas I feel they've gone back in that release, just because it goes to white, it felt to me that they were going back into themselves, their mind palace, I guess, for want of a better phrase. But then in that moment, they were able to distinguish that in effect, Dr. Harrow was, an attacking virus, some kind of pathogen that is there trying, as you say, to effectively make them believe that this is normality.
Yeah.
But because of the bleeding feet, bleeding from the real world because he is bloodied, but still alive, that
bleeding from the glass that's been in his shoe.
Yeah.
In his shoes.
Bleeding through still because he's still alive. He hasn't been killed or executed at the orders of Khonshu. That's the tell for them. And then they realize they know more about actually now what's going on in their own mind. And then you see them waking up in Stephen's apartment in London. So I kind of still thought it was their mind, but equally, I don't know for certain. And yours is the flip side of that theory, which it could also be.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it was a nice, it was a surprising touch once they were released. I wasn't expecting to suddenly be back in the asylum. I thought that was very much connected with the shooting and the near-death experience.
Yeah.
So coming back into that world, I was like, okay, so if it is the near-death, it might be Harrow because he was close to death.
I really feel a tendency to want to correct you. The absolute death experience, as Twarat says, you are definitely dead.
But that's true,
100%.
yes, the absolute death, of which Harrow isn't. So I'm not entirely sure, but I'm still eking onto it's Mark and Stephen's mind palace.
Well, we said we had theories for this one. So
yeah, I am of the opinion. I am with John on this. Sorry, I felt that this was a culmination of a capstone to their internal conflict of, because he goes through the different voices. He goes through both Mark and Stephen's voice instantaneously. And you see that it's the beginning and it's again the culmination. Back in the original version when they were talking, it was this back and forth. You were again the switch, the straight switch, the more definitive kind of juttering part where you had Mark and you had Stephen. This again was, I think, the capstone on this scene, if you will, this battle between no, this is real, this is us, this is life, this is our life, this is we're in control. And I think that's where what I took from that was that they were in control and they were able to guide and control their environment. I think it was that kind of thing. Like before, they couldn't control anything in that office, and then they were able to go, no, we know who you are, we know what you are. And that's then i.e. the bloody sandals. Cool. It was a bit of a shunt in the story where it's like that fade to white and you're in, and I was like, oh wait, hold on. It was like, surprise, the whole thing was in their head. Ta-da! And I was like, oh no. If they had done that, I think like the world would have rioted. Yeah.
But again, it's a nice touch to kind of call back to it in your finale again. Call back to another thing that's made this series so special and so interesting. Speaking of putting a capstone on it, anything else about the Battle of the Gods and Monsters and the resolution of the episode before we go on to a quick chat about Jake? Anything else about the episode?
No, that's all for me.
Definitely want to mention that we do see two goldfish back in Mark and Stephen's apartment as well. So nice to see that. Even if it is Jake that's tying them down to the bed before he goes out and becomes, or after he comes back from being the Avatar Khonshu, that he's still replacing the fish and taking care of them. So there you go.
I just like that they were having a conversation.
Yes, that was cool.
Like they were talking to each other and having the back and forth. And I'm like, that is what I want to see. If we get a season 2 or a film or whenever we see Moon Knight again, I want to have that back and forth, even if it's only in his head or if it's out loud.
Absolutely.
Like Oscar Isaac kind of pulling on his deep acting chops and going back and forth kind of with himself would be just fantastic.
Absolutely. It'd be great. It'd be great to see. I'd love to see the reactions of other people as he has that conversation with himself. That's really cool. Right. Let's talk about post-credit Jake then. We'll just do a short one. But what overall post-credit Jake? Chris, what do you think?
Where's the mustache? Come on. I just wanted, and we joked, and yes, you did. We all agreed that a fake mustache would have looked ridiculous.
Yes.
But I just wanted it. I wanted it very bad, cheesy, and it's just kind of, even if it was a joking thing where he turned around in his cap and had a fake mustache and then took it off and went, it's I, Leclerc. Kind of something, not obviously that's silly, but like
that's
something,
a
reference.
That's the French.
A reference to the facial hair would have been very funny.
I could kind of see that they could do something like in his car, he has a bunch of things that he dresses up to cover his face and make him look different. I can totally see that. But definitely in this show, if you're switching back and forth between 3 altars, it would make no sense for him to throw on a fake beard or a monocle every time.
He's just like jumping back and forth, putting on mutton chops and a mustache and a cap. It's like, okay, now I can talk to myself.
Yeah, like already, does he have to carry a flat cap in his pocket every time he's as Mark and Stephen just to put the flat cap on so we know it's Jake?
Bayeki does. Which was why I was surprised he had a Spanish accent when I saw him with the flag.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This is another change from the comic book. So we have now got a Spanish speaking Jake Lockley here as well. So that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I just really kind of enjoyed this because no qualms he shoots Harrow here.
Yeah,
and just loved with Khonshu sort of just really, cementing his manipulativeness here.
Once again, Khonshu doesn't do his own dirty work. He gets his avatar, this now Jake, to do the dirty work. He was specifically told to Mark, we're now free, you kill him if you want to kill him. And he goes and gets Jake. Harsh.
And Khonshu is in the Mr. Knight suit, which was cool.
He is, that's right. Yes.
In the back of the thing. And just the fact that it is this limo and this very cool callback to some of the comic books. Overall, I really enjoy the Spanish accent. I'm trying to think how that fully plays into previous. So, like, is it that he is a full Spanish speaking character and only speaks Spanish? I don't know, because the other versions or accents that we thought we heard in previous episodes, I don't know how that links with a Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
Or like where in the United States or you would have a Spanish speaking kind of group with that accent, which we thought was a bit more New York based,
right? Like
Jersey based. But
yeah, they'd have to explain quite a lot, because again, we saw the creation of Stephen Grant last episode. His name taken from a poster on the wall, so not particularly called Stephen Grant because that's where he comes from. He doesn't have a London accent because he comes from London. He has a London accent because he was taking that from TV shows that he was watching. Is it possible that Jake Lockley is a Spanish-speaking character and Mark is affecting an American accent from another city, an English-speaking American accent from another city? We don't know that. There's definitely not enough in the episode to tell. And that does throw out all of the theories that we've seen Jake in the past, because we heard this gruffer voice. If he doesn't speak English, then we didn't see Jake at all, or we didn't hear Jake at all throughout the season. So I'm guessing he speaks Spanish and he also has a gruffer American accent. I guess he has both. So that would be my only guess, because otherwise we've never seen Jake throughout the season, because we were all saying it was on The Voice for every time that we've seen him. So but I loved it, and it makes sense with Oscar Isaac that this alter would be another completely different alter, and him being Spanish speaking makes sense.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned the nod to the comics with the car, Chris. Just want to call out, throughout the series, people have been confused as to why Stephen Grant is the way he is in the show, because he's so different from comic book Stephen Grant. Comic book Stephen Grant is the billionaire playboy, effectively, who would be able to own a limo, a very expensive car. So what we see here is effectively, possibly anyway, what we see is Jake could be the alter that has the money. So that's something that they could explore in a future season. I'm really glad overall that one of the things I wanted to say about the season, I'm really glad that they made this really distinct separation between the stupid idea that this character is anyway similar to Batman. But at the end of the season, now that they've established who Mark Spector is, they've established who Stephen Grant is, they've established Moon Knight, and now at the end of the season, they can have a little bit of a play with that. They have got this, as I say, possible billionaire's car. They've got the gadgets that you'd see from Batman, and they have the Moon Knight over the moon moment, which is so synonymous with Batman. So they're able to do it at the end of the season because they've earned it. They've earned the differentiation now between this character and that other DC character.
100%. And I'm the one who made the joke in episode 1. And this for me is that they've gone beyond earning it. They have made such a differentiation. I didn't cop that DC comic reference over the moon until we discussed it later on.
Wow.
I was like, oh yeah, that does. Because I didn't connect the dot, like I didn't associate the two because they have made it so distinct. And I didn't accept the billionaire limousine. I just connected to the comic books. In some of the later runs, he uses his limo as a almost like roaming base with a computer and everything like that. And I was like, oh, that's a nice callback. Well done. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Overall, it was good. My one bit, which I just want to call out here, and this is the final dip down, was I was expecting a place card, which Moon Knight will return. Not where, not when, not how, just Moon Knight will return. Obviously, better if in season 2, like Loki, or Moon Knight will return in Multiverse of Madness, like WandaVision, potentially.
Go to the cinema tonight.
Yeah. I was expecting something like that. Okay. Now, we already announced this is, we're recording on May 4th. It came out on May 4th, so that is obviously synonymously tied to Star Wars. So all the Disney accounts are in overdrive on Star Wars. So fully understand they may be giving it 48 hours breathing room, maybe Friday or early next week or next Wednesday when we get potentially disassembled a making of. We may get a Moon Knight will return. They could still be in negotiations. Who knows? Yeah. I just thought I would have liked that because it felt a bit, oh, okay. Like that was the issue. It was almost like I was expecting a kind of triumphant, we have laid our flag with this character. Like he will return. You like we know you like him. We like him. He will be back either in the movies or because we already know that say Miss Marvel is going to be in the Marvels, Captain Marvel 2. Yeah. So I fully expect at the end of that season in July, we will get Miss Marvel will return in the Marvels. And like, that's how that will go. It just felt, and like within 24 hours, we got the announcement of Captain America 4 for Winter Soldier and Captain America. So it just felt a bit, I'm hoping, and I think that's probably more, there's part of me being somewhat deflated, disappointed in that I'm hoping that I'm not imagining all the hype and goodwill that this show has because I really do like this character. Yeah. I'm not kind of overinflating that how good of a critical and or audience reception I got with this one, or I think there has been with this show.
Yeah, I think it was Mohammed Diab or Jeremy Slater put out last night on their Twitter after the episode come out that it's the most in-demand show that Marvel have had on Disney+. So really good signs. I think Hawkeye in the end ended off being one of the lowest shows because of the time of year that was going on, I think was part of it. But Moon Knight seems to have done really well. Here's one for you, Chris.
Go on.
Because he called back to Loki being one of the only shows that has had a second season announced. That was announced with a title card instead of a post-credit scene.
Yeah.
There you go. How about your options where either get this post-credit scene with Jake, effectively setting up some options for Moon Knight in the future, or we got a card that said, in 2 years' time, you'll be getting a season 2.
That is Sophie's choice. I am not going to make that choice because that is not what we got, and that is not what reality is.
I prefer this one. I prefer the
Yeah.
choice they made here, having this post-credit scene and not telling us when he's coming back, because I'm hopeful.
Yes.
You know, Oscar Isaac
absolutely.
seems to have enjoyed it. The audience seem to have enjoyed it, and hopefully that means that there'll be some negotiation where we'll see Moon Knight in the future, and there's loads of options there with the end of this episode. I think that's it for our discussion on the episode of Moon Knight. So, guys, do you defend Moon Knight Episode 6, Gods and Monsters? I'll kick off with you, John.
Yes. I absolutely defend this final episode of Moon Knight, Gods and Monsters. I give it, and dare I say it, this is a record for me, 5 lethal limo drivers out of 5.
That's every single episode this season.
I think I just loved this show.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it wrapped up really, really nicely. And I just loved all the aspects that came into play into this final episode, which was effectively primarily action interspersed with some really good emotional beats to it. And the post-credit scene with Jake, I'm so glad they put that in there, given the blackout bit, because I was a little bit kind of, my heart was in the balance, I think, in that moment. So this to me was just really class. I found the whole series class. I just love the whole topic area of, like, you know, archaeology type things, superheroes, Egyptians. It's all just fantastic stuff. So for me, 5 lethal limo drivers out of 5.
Excellent. How about yourself, Chris? Do you defend this episode of Moon Knight?
I do. As I said before, this is it's a strong kind of B+, A- for me on this episode. And the gripes I have are based on small, minuscule things. I honestly came into this thinking this would be a trash fire because we had 44 minutes to wrap up so much. And I literally did not think it was possible. And we got economy of storytelling, as you guys have said, and but we didn't get a Basil exposition moment. We didn't get any of these kind of very cliche moments where you're like, all right, there you go. That's how you're going to pull these 4 bits in. We got kaiju level monster gods fighting. We got new superheroes. We got some amazing fight scenes, and we got the potential for more. And I'm hoping that potential just leads to something. But Derek, what about yourself? Did you defend this final episode of Moon Knight?
Absolutely, yeah. I loved this entire series. It's been so fascinating to go through. We, as we mentioned before, we were lucky enough to get the first 4 episodes. I think we watched all of those to death before the last 2 episodes came out, and the last 2 episodes didn't disappoint. They really put a capper on this season that I couldn't expect to happen. I think we were all really excited at the end of episode 4, having seen them so many times. We were all really excited, hoping that they were going to be able to deliver on those final 2 episodes, and they really did. They've told a really good story. They've dealt with lots of serious topics really well within the confines of a superhero show in some ways. Some great historical touch points, some great nods to, as you say, John, the archaeology type stuff, like Indiana Jones, done really well. When they are referencing things, they're referencing it really well. They're not doing anything on the cheap here. They've given a great job, and they've given a great series to a great character who I hope now has loads of fans, rabid fans out there looking to read some comic books, and some great comic books as well. So loved it. It did exactly what I wanted to see it done, and I'm really hoping we see more of Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight in the future, because this is a character that can't be left behind. I really want to see more.
Definitely.
Good stuff. Oh, I think I need a drink after that, guys. Let's head on over for our final question in our Bar with No Name quiz, or pub quiz to other people. John, do you want to give us the final question in our Bar with No Name quiz?
Certainly. Yes, Fellow defenders, fellow quizzers, question 6. What car does Jake Lockley drive, and what is the registration plate?
Ooh, very good. Very good. One from the post-credit scene. Excellent. That is the final question in our pub quiz. So now's the time. Get your answers in. You need to put together all the answers from all the questions throughout the episodes of Moon Knight. All available on our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. Email them into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with each of the answers. And on our wrap-up episode for Moon Knight, which we should be doing in a couple of weeks' time, we will choose a winner of the Moon Knight goodies. John, do you want to give them the question one more time?
Yes, what car does Jake Lockley drive, and what is the registration plate?
Are we looking for make and model of the car as well?
The make.
Okay.
The make of the car, I wouldn't actually know what model it is, but the type of car as well.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Excellent.
Just to fuzzy the waters. So it's looking for the model and the type of car that Jake Lockley drives, and the registration.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Hoping to get all of your answers into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com really soon. This episode of TV Podcast Industries is brought to you by our supporters over on Patreon, including Mike Scannell. Thank you so much, Mike, for your support.
Yes, thanks, Mike.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike. And if you want to be like Mike, you can head on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where you can support us for any monthly amount, and it helps keep the lights on and everything. But if you would like to keep our illustrious editor and director and producer in caffeine while he toils away into the wee hours of the Egyptian night, you can head on over to a one-off donation on buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you can buy him a coffee. Yes, it is that simple. Yep. You want to buy him a coffee, go to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI. Don't forget, you can also support us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing with your friends, your other gods and other monsters, if you will. Remember, sharing the podcast is sharing the love, unless you are a 30-foot large kaiju. I suppose they maybe want to listen to podcasts too. I don't know. Maybe Godzilla and Amit and Khonshu all like listening to this very podcast.
Well, we did see Amit and Khonshu trying to share some love. She was trying to encourage him to join her calls.
Yes, true.
At one point of the episode, wasn't she? Let's get on to some feedback from our wonderful fellow defenders. Kicking off with some feedback to our email address at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Suzanne Nelson says, okay, why didn't I notice until the last episode of the season that the moon in the credits is changing phases with each episode? Best line in this show so far is, are you an Egyptian superhero? Yes, I am. Absolutely awesome. Great show. Great finale. Thanks, Suzanne.
Yes, thanks so much, Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne, for the feedback.
Yeah.
I didn't spot the moon phases changing either.
Really?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't
one of the
think
criticisms I saw of the season only being 6 episodes was, but there are 8 phases of the moon, and the moon's changing every episode. You need 2 more episodes. Love it. Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you again. Also on email, Coffee and Vodka wrote in and says, greeting fellow resurrected defenders. Kevin Feige's run as gatekeeper of Marvel's phases 1 to 3 has no doubt been made part of at least one professor's university curriculum. Nice artistic license you've got there. Meet my little friend continuity. And it worked, creating the longest running, most successful cinematic superhero story run ever. Phase 4 gave a glimmer of the same, but it quickly became apparent that this is not your father's Marvel. With the multiverse, continuity has taken up rear guard, and artistic license is now on point in a hit or miss jungle. And with only a single episode to tie in so much, I was afraid this hit would trip over its artistic feet, face planting right onto an anti-personnel mine of miss, giving the viewer PTSD of a screen suddenly going black with Journey's Don't Stop Believing suddenly flashing up before my eyes. Coffee and Vodka continues, well, that was unnecessary. This episode was everything one could hope for and more. All the action, humour, artful direction with graphic novel sensibility, special effects, and Mefit Jake's real. Really, really real. Layla was given her due as both a fully formed character in her own right, as well as well as in a superhero outfit that I can only assume has Patty Jenkins eating her heart out. Everything was tied up in a perfect linen bow with enough options to keep it a single miniseries or open it up to more seasons. Masterful all the way round, though I do wonder why Amit couldn't continue doing the evil she does so well in Harrow's body. 5 healing hearts, clashes of titans, and hippo heroines out of 5. Peace and take care, coffee and vodka. P.S. A quick show of hands. Who else would have broken all 10 statues while there?
I think all 3 of our
Yes.
hands are up here. All 6 of the hands that we have are up for that one. It did feel like one of those moments where Layla could just knock a couple off the shelf while she's there, you know.
She's a bold cat. She's literally, oops,
exactly.
oops. Oh no, you left the statue here? Oh no, it would be terrible if it fell over. Oh no, there you go.
She does, in fairness to her, she does look at every statue individually before she finds Khonshu. So she's really careful because possibly there's a really good reason why these have all been
Exactly.
committed to Ushabti. What would happen if she just knocked out the Mephisto effectively?
Yeah.
What if she did that? You know.
So my pitch for season 2 is the old gods, so the Osiris and all those with their new avatars, versus all of these gods that were trapped in Ashantis. So literally, then you have Mark and / Stephen and Layla stuck in the middle.
Right.
They are. It is the war of the gods or the Egyptian gods. It could be very cool. And then
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, good one.
thank you.
Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka, for your feedback.
We also have an email in from Jerry in Niceville. Jerry says, "Hey guys, this episode was a mixed bag. Layla, a superhero, amazing. What name will they give her? Mark and Stephen taking turns as Moon Knight, very fun. The Harrow plot seemed rushed. God's kaiju fight was okay, was kinda distracting. More Layla, please. The end credit was the best part. The name of the mental institution nods to the great Moon Knight artist Bill Sienkiewicz, gangster Khonshu, and the Spanish-speaking Jake Lockley. Mark is indeed rich based on the car with custom license plate. What does the future hold? I will rewatch the series to give my overall thoughts of it as a whole. Your loyal avatar, Jerry in Niceville." Thanks so much, Jerry. Yes, it's. I think the Scarlet Scarab is. I guess what we're resting on anyway, but I think that was confirmed as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. I think in the comic books, the character who was her father in the TV show, it was the Scarlet Scarab, but she doesn't come from the comic books, but she is Scarlet Scarab in the MCU, and hopefully going to be coming back. I saw an interview with Meg Holloway that says she's really interested. If Marvel are open to it, she'll be back in future, which is great news.
Yeah, and I think to your point on the end credit being one of the best parts there, I also think it was hugely important given the need to reveal Jake in some form, and this did without needing them to suddenly go off and exposition the hell out of him, sort of in the episode.
Exactly.
And yes, look at you, sort of slightly predicting one part of the pub quiz question for this week.
I like that Jerry self-censored himself. I haven't fixed his email or anything like that. That he's talking about a car with custom license plates. We need more detail of that for the pub quiz question for this week. Excellent, Jerry. Thanks.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Jerry.
We also have an email in from Victor Von Doom who says, "Greetings, Defenders. I think we saw Jake or results of his actions in every single episode this season. One was the aftermath of the rooftop fight. Jake also appears in the final scene in episode 2. I also believe Jake was staring at the security camera after killing the jackal in episode 1. It seems whenever Mark finds corpses at his feet, Jake has been there. Looks like Mr. Knight's muscle memory kicked in." The mixture of fights between the gods and avatars was fantastic. Layla made a nice Scarlet Scarab. Maybe Twaret will let her go after Bushman. As always, looking forward to TVPI podcasts and Defenders feedback. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. Ooh, I like that idea for a second season that Layla as the Scarlet Scarab would be going after Bushman, the person who killed her father.
Yeah, or at least some part of that within a series 2, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that is really good. Yeah. And interestingly, I think you bring it up, and it was certainly in the back of my mind about Mr. Knight finding that muscle memory, because that's exactly what happens.
Yeah,
Mr. Knight becomes very, very proficient with his batons and his spins and so on, which was really good to see.
Exactly. His
So
new skill set, as he says.
I did like that. But yeah, good spot there and good call there, Victor. Great stuff. Yeah, I think that security camera one definitely, and also the security guard at the museum keeps calling Stephen completely different names
Scottish,
as well.
I think it was.
So there could be, but I think a whole range of different names. So
We'll see more.
definitely there. Thanks, Victor.
Over on Twitter, Jerry Edelin says this: "It was incredible. I loved it. I live in the US. I've been listening to your weekly coverage of this series of your podcasts. You all do such a wonderful job." Thank you, Jerry. You do a wonderful job of listening. Thank you. And tweeting us. So appreciate it.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Jerry.
Great to hear from you, Jerry. Thanks so much for getting in contact with us over on Twitter. Over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, Brandy Gilly Sanderson sent us some thoughts on the episode. She said, "Look, we all know that was awesome. That hit all the points I wanted and needed, including making Layla the Scarlet Scarab like they've been hinting at since episode 3. I wasn't sure if it was going to be like how they've shown us people we know later on and how they become superheroes. Like she's going to be Moon Knight's version of Elijah Bradley or Billy and Tommy from WandaVision. But no, we get to see her suited up and in action. This episode stuck the landing with a great mix of emotion and action-filled scenes. The characters' decisions stayed true to form, and it was surprising because I really didn't expect Stephen Mark to acknowledge the third, even if the audience got Jake. But they both immediately agree that wasn't them, and even though he was speaking Spanish, he still got that tight-lipped speaking style like we saw on that beat-up Mark in episode 5. And the whole Khonshu knowing about Jake and continuing to use Mark and Stephen through the connection is a nice touch to the end of the Lemire run from what I've heard. And though I would have loved to see a Moon Knight will return tag between that mid-credit scene and Disney's since deleted Tweet Switch series finale and season finale, I am more than comfortable remaining hopefully optimistic for a season 2. Good stuff, Brandy. Yeah, I think really, really good thoughts there on the episode overall. Yeah, really good thoughts there, Brandy. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. You know, we have seen these kind of side characters come in throughout the episode. I think Photon is probably the only superhero that we've seen formed in the show, and we've seen her fully superpower. There are these kind of side characters that come in, like Billy and Tommy in WandaVision, and Elijah Bradley, who is the former Captain America in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who is a nod to the comic books, but really cool to see Layla take up this position as Scarlet Scarab in this episode. Very cool to actually see her in action.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandy. And yeah, like you, we are hopefully optimistic for a season 2. Over on Facebook as well, we also have Michael Booth, who had this to say: "Well, there we go. Just about everything nicely wrapped up in a bow, and what a wonderful bow. Layla got some time to shine, and we got her as an amazingly costumed Egyptian superhero. I don't know how becoming a hippo goddess avatar gave her bird wings, though. I was expecting to see more tanky hippo-like armor stepping out of the rubble of the tomb. The final fight was well done. The fluidity between Mark and Stephen was awesome to see. I especially like the transition to Mr. Knight to make Harrow lose his grip on the cloak. Mm-hmm. I do feel like there was a little Deus Ex Machina going on at the end. They are solidly losing. He transitions and suddenly all is good. Jake must be one hell of a fighter to get out of that position without him or Layla getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And speaking of Jake, tricky Khonshu, I wonder where he will turn up next."
Don't we all?
Definitely. Yes. Great stuff, Michael. Yeah, I know. I think that flashed through my mind as well with the Scarab costume, given that Tauret is mainly hippo. So it would have been interesting to have seen a tanky hippo-like armor for sure, but it would have protected her from all that falling masonry, I guess, in the pyramid. Yes. But good stuff. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, but I think there's just that little tiny touch from Tauret saying that she knows her father. So the fact that she has had some sort of relationship with her father when bringing him over to the Field of Reeds makes me think that because he used to call her my little scarab, that she has an idea of what kind of outfit she'd like to wear.
Yeah,
as the temporary,
for sure.
avatar. So good stuff. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Also on Facebook, Ray from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, says, what a fantastic way to cap off a season of one of my favourite characters. Already feeling sad it's over, but still riding high on what I've seen. Mm-hmm. I think the finale works well if taken holistically along the whole season. Sounds obvious, I know, but if taken on its own, it could just be seen as an all-out slugfest, when in fact it's a culmination of many, many moving parts. Although my only quibble was how quickly things went. I would have liked to have seen the Ennead versus Harrow, the blackout when Jake takes down Harrow. I would have loved to have seen Harrow get his just desserts at the hands of Mark, Steven, and Jake. It also went quickly because I was just having the time of my life. Seeing the deities fight and the backdrop of the Harrow, Moon Knight, Scarlet Scarab fight was wonderful. It harked back to the classic images of the gods fighting in the skies whilst mortals fought their battles. Really, really nice imagery. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to lean on you to see what you made of the end. Deliciously ambiguous. Harrow with bloodied feet in Mark's mindscape. Steven back in his apartment. What just happened? Added to that, Harrow also appears to be committed to the awesomely named Sienkiewicz Psychiatric Hospital. So does this mean he did exist trying to raise Amit and was thwarted? The more I think about it, perhaps the organising principle of Mark's mind conjured up the bloodied feet as acknowledgement that Harrow is real and is bad. So much to chat about. Jake too. And where to from here? If anyone said Moon Knight never leaves you with questions, then they just don't know the character. Top viewing and, without doubt, my favourite Marvel show. Here's to another season. Absolutely. I think we're all rooting for a season 2. And at least if we don't get that, hopefully he comes onto the big screen within the cinematic universe and see how he gets on over there as well, for sure. I think totally with you around the backdrop with the gods playing out in the skies. It's almost a bit of the Eternals feel with that as well. And rightly so. It really is classic way of doing the gods and in the sky and that big fight scene. I think I'm with you around the asylum, being back in the asylum. I think we were talking about that in the podcast there. I still think it's in Mark's mindscape there, and the blood sort of just gave the game away for them. And because, you know, I don't know how they would get into Harrow's mindscape in that sense. So I think this is an organization of their mindscape, their learning library or whatever you call it, and it, you know, within their own minds. So yeah, good stuff. I'm so glad as well, Ray, that you have been giddy with excitement over it as well. I have been too. Absolutely. And yeah, again, I really hope there's a season 2 here. I think there certainly is. And also that he permeates into the cinematic world as well.
I certainly hope there's more Moon Knight, whatever way we get them. And I'm really glad that you've been enjoying it, Ray, particularly given that you've been running a podcast for the last 5 years about Moon Knight. It's really disappointing when you get to the point that you have to podcast about a show, and if the show doesn't work, I feel really sorry. There's one of our friends who does a podcast about the Inhumans and has been podcasting about issues over and over again for quite a long time. And then the Inhumans TV show came out, and effectively it did so poorly that Inhumans hardly even appear in the comic books anymore because they're trying to distance themselves from the character. Like that must be the worst feeling.
Definitely.
And then suddenly you're going back and the only thing you have to cover are the old issue of the comics, nothing new coming out. But it's a plethora of amazing Moon Knight content at the moment.
Yeah. It could be me on Saturday after seeing Doctor Strange 2.
Well, at least you've had 4 or 5 good appearances of Doctor Strange in the past, and tons of great comic books as well. So.
Can I just remind everyone of Jupiter's Legacy?
Yep, that's true.
There we go. Yep. That was my I love that comic book. Some of the best writing in the world. Absolutely adored it. And that show came out, and that thing is dead.
And the show was so bad we didn't even cover it on the podcast, despite
Nope.
getting previews of the episodes as well, unfortunately. So yeah, what a shame. What a shame. Nice call out from Ray. I just want to highlight it again. The Sienkiewicz psychiatric hospital is the place where Harrow is being held in London, named after Bill Sienkiewicz, a fantastic Marvel artist. Well, a fantastic artist overall, but has done some amazing work over the years in Marvel. So a nice little call out there. They used to do this a lot during the Netflix days, just calling out names of artists and names of writers. So it's great to see that they've done that again with Bill Sienkiewicz, a great artist. Thanks so much, Ray. Dr. Bob Phillips has some thoughts on the episode as well. He says, gosh, wow, crikey. That's wrapped things up in the sense of seeing a glimpse of a fave toy disappearing under layers of pass the parcel. Delighted it's there and hopeful it will get opened in the very, very near future. So I think Jake, Mark, Stephen are real. The flying hippo is a true superhero we needed, and Harrow went a bit potty after becoming Avatar 2, which is possibly a warning for an upcoming film. Superb season. Might well watch it again.
Oh, definitely. Second viewing is on the cards, Bob. And I think the flying hippo is a superhero that we truly needed and deserve at this time.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, like, even if they do bring Moon Knight back, are we going to get Tourette back again? Because she was awesome. I really want to see her back and just have her as the avatar of Scarlet Scarab. So at least we could see her on screen again.
One quick note I forgot to put in: there's a bust of Bast in the chamber that we see there, which, and for those not who might be interested, Bast is the god of Wakanda.
That's right.
That is called upon by the Black Panther. Yeah. So just a nice little nod there. I was like, ooh, excellent. That might be the season 2. Oh, there you go. Hello.
Yes, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so that's interesting because we've had call-outs to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as we mentioned, with Madripoor and with those connections that were going on there. And we've had call-outs a number of times now to Black Panther. So you never know, maybe the Wakanda series that's coming up starring Denai Guerrera, the Disney Plus series, maybe that's another place where Moon Knight could appear. So lots of possibilities.
We also got some additional Facebook feedback. Gail Cleary says, so happy Stephen was only mostly dead. I love that they showed Mark could never be happy unless he was whole. Khonshu might have stopped Amit, but Khonshu is still evil. He has been manipulating Mark for a long time. He knows too much about Mark's brother and family. I think Khonshu killed Mark's brother and somehow helped drive his mother insane so that he could break Mark's mind and turn him into Khonshu's version of an ideal avatar. I love that theory.
Really interesting.
Real proper premeditated Khonshu evil would be kind of pretty deep, I think.
I like
that. Yeah, really dark, really deep, and I like it, Gail. Yes, certainly do. This seems confirmed in the post-credit scene with Jake. Jake is Khonshu's instrument, Mark is second banana, and Stephen is the idiot. Khonshu never would have gotten Jake without Mark enduring years of horrendous abuse. If we see more of Moon Knight, I hope it's about Mark and Stephen realizing this and working to somehow free Jake from Khonshu's grasp. Makes me wonder how many times Jake was killed and resurrected by Khonshu, and if that will complicate things even more. Thanks for the podcast, gentlemen. I love hearing your thoughts and theories, Gail. Thanks so much, Gail. Really glad you're enjoying the podcast, and I absolutely am loving your theory here and potential for a season 2. I just think it's really kind of good.
I like it. I don't think we called out in the scene where Mark's in the flashback with his brother going into the cave. There is a dead bird on the ground with the bird skull that looks kind of like Khonshu as well. So a possible tie-in, but again, it's all mixed up in Mark's mind. So possibly not a direct link, but an interesting one nonetheless. Thanks, Gail. Claire Laffer says, I was hoping that Khonshu's associate at the end would be Mephisto. Now, in all serious, love this show and wish the season was longer. I was confused as to why Jake spoke only Spanish, though. Love Layla in the show.
Yeah, Layla is fantastic. And I'm sure Khonshu knows Mephisto, given that they kind of inhabit that god and spiritual world, or at least knows of him. Maybe not pen pals. But given Gail's feedback and thoughts, maybe he is. Maybe he is pen pals with old Mephisto.
He might be.
Great stuff. Thanks, Claire. Sandy Resendez says, the major thing, for me anyway, that this show got right was that they made me care about these characters.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm invested like I was, I can overlook the things that didn't make sense or felt off. I definitely will watch again, and now I want to read Moon Knight comics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good stuff, Sandy. That's brilliant. It's made you want to deep dive in that way for sure. And
Absolutely.
I think you're right. You know, I'm kind of there. I've given every episode of this season 5 stars, and I have never done that. Probably never will again.
Yeah.
And part of that is down to the fact that you're right. They make you care about the characters. It's so kind of richly layered. It doesn't necessarily have to be deep even. It's just layered and thought out.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters all make sense together.
Yep.
And anything that's just a little off or a bit rushed, it's not fazing me because I'm just immersed in the series. And I'm guessing that you were too, Sandy. So that's really, really good.
Yeah.
And certainly on the Moon Knight comics front, Into the Night would probably be a better reference than ourselves. But certainly the Lemire run, which, you know, this series draws heavily from, is certainly one to look at.
It's
There
excellent, yeah.
is a Brian Michael Bendis one that I actually really quite liked.
I know you do, yes.
But I know it's controversial within the Moon Knight world.
Yeah.
And there's also the series of comics by Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey as well. So
Really good. Greg
yeah.
Smallwood's fantastic.
Smallwood.
The current run as well is really, really excellent. And it comes from a place where they're using characters that fans would know. But if you don't know the character, pick up this run. Jed MacKay is doing a great job of reintroducing to the character. But I think Ray over Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, said it's as jarring going to the TV show as a comic book fan as it will be for TV show fans going to the comic book, because it is very different in terms of story and what they're doing in the comic book.
Yeah.
Great character. Definitely check it out. Thanks, Sandy. Joe Herbers says, I liked it, and surprisingly, my wife liked it more. She's only sort of into the MCU. I loved the first episode, but the mystery was kind of gone for me after that initial fun setup. Great acting and some interesting elements, but in total, it wasn't awesome as a series for me. Thanks, Joe. I'm kind of looking forward to looking back on the full season now that we've got all the elements in place and how the episodes all worked out. Really interesting that your wife liked it more than you, though, as a non-MCU fan. There were very, very few connections, really, as the series went on. To the MCU, we saw references here and there,
exactly,
mentions of things here and there, but the first Marvel show without any kind of cameo from any other character from another series or from another property, which is really interesting in and of itself. But it does stand on its own 2 feet as its own story, which is interesting. I really do want to see how they will incorporate it in future into the MCU.
Yeah, I think it might just be the character incorporated in, and that's it really.
Yeah.
And maybe Moon Knight even gets, you know, the team up, as I say, Midnight Suns. I would love to see.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear, Joe, that there was enjoyment to greater or lesser extent within the household. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks, Joe. Finally, on Facebook, Christina Jones says, I don't give an F how much Marvel needs to pay Oscar. Bring it back for season 2. Also, Jake, that is all. Indeed, that's all that needs to be said.
It is.
I think.
It is.
Excellent stuff.
Chris did it. Fantastic stuff. Good to hear your thoughts on the season. And yeah, not much needs to be said. We'd love to see a season 2. Great to see Jake in here as well. So excellent stuff. Thanks so much to everybody for your feedback. We do have another opportunity for anybody to get their feedback in. If you didn't get any feedback into us throughout the season, we will be doing a wrap-up episode in a couple of weeks' time. So keep emailing your thoughts into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, and you can pop your thoughts on any of the spoiler posts that are on there for the episodes.
And of course, you can send in your answers to the pub quiz questions to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And if you've missed any of the questions, you can head on over to our website, tvpodcastindustries.com, where they are all laid out for Moon Knight. season 1, I will say. And of course, if you're doing any other of our quizzes that we're doing at the moment, the questions are laid out there on tvpodcastindustries.com.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Speaking of other things we're doing at the moment, we mentioned earlier on, we are closing down our coverage of Star Trek Picard Season 2 this week because the final episode of that show comes out on Friday over in Ireland and the UK, on Thursday in North America. So we will be finishing up our Star Trek Picard podcasting. We will also be going over to the multiverse with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness this week. So we will have our podcast on Multiverse Madness out next week. We're hoping to have it out by about Wednesday of next week, to give everybody time to go and see it at the cinema and enjoy the experience and get your feedback into us about that too.
Yeah, no, please do. I am getting very, very excited for Multiverse of Madness, so it better not be crap.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, exactly.
But if you want to hear those thoughts, make sure you subscribe to all our feeds at tvpodcastindustries.com. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, defenders and Picard heads, Trekkies and Trekkers, multiversal travelers and beyond, we will be back into your ear holes in a couple of days, and we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for listening to our coverage of this season, series, whatever we are calling it, of Moon Knight. We've a pleasure having you. Fingers crossed we get it disassembled. We will be back with our wrap up, and we will speak to you all again very soon.
Oh yeah, making of definitely coming out 11th of May. Just so you're all aware, that's definitely coming out next week. So we will see it. That will be part of our wrap up episode.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow defenders. It has been great discussing the phases of the moon with you through this season 1 of Moon Knight. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending.
Full moon. Total eclipse. Half moon. Full moon.
Thank you, May Calamway, for also going through the phases of the moon with us this whole episode. I'm enjoying my new toy. I might use that again next time.
Yeah.
And the toy is a soundboard, not May.
Very true. Yes, very
exactly.
true. Thanks so much.
We do not have May put in a corner. No one puts May in a corner.
Exactly. Thank you so much. We'll speak to you again next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Full moon.
Yes, you can also send in to feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com all the pub quiz questions. And of course, all the questions are over on our website at tvpodcastindustries.com.
Yes, or you could send in all the answers, and then you'll be in with a chance to get your hands on some Moon Knight goodies. We have the questions. We need the answers.
But we'd like your answers too.
Yeah, no, do, because otherwise you'd just be copying and pasting it from our website. So send
That is
the
not
answers
staying in. I've
Yes,
saw
it
that
is.
again.
Yes, it is.
Half moon.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow defenders. As always, it has been great discussing the phases of the moon with you over this.
So sorry.
He giggled at his own joke there.
You're setting me up. Go on.
It's been great discussing all the phases of the moon. It's been great discussing the phases of the moon. What is going on?
I'm sorry. I'm anticipating.
Total eclipse.